Hey everyone, Juan here. Welcome to SQL Lingua Franca, the podcast about analytics that reveals what the documentation does not cover.
SQL Lingua Franca. Bio.
Today, we have, funnily enough, the person that recruited me for my current job. His name is Luuk, and he's a very experienced data recruiter. We're going to talk from tips to people looking for a job in data at the moment. We're going to talk a little bit about fairness in recruitment and even how AI is shaping the recruitment landscape. So, Luuk, before you even start telling me about you as a professional, I'm curious, who are you as a person?
So I'm Luuk. I'm 33 years old. I'm living in Maasen. I was going to say with my girlfriend, but we are now engaged, actually.
Oh, congrats.
So she's now my fiancée. Thank you. Living there together with our cat, and spending most of my time being addicted to speed in various forms. So, fast cars, fast bikes. I also race on a simulator. And I'm also quite addicted to chess. So when I play chess, it's also speed chess. I think that's mainly me as a person.
Oh, combining chess and Formula One into one, I never thought of that.
It's possible. It's
funny. And now, tell me a bit about you as a professional.
Yeah. So I've made quite a weird bit of a journey. So I started my professional career in the music industry. Actually, I was one of the first people in the Netherlands on YouTube making tutorials about how to produce music. So I did that for a couple of years, and also started actually as a teacher on music production in the Netherlands, Belgium, and England. And that kind of grew a bit, and I started to get more business in that area. And I think for about 8 or 9 years, I had a career in the music industry, also as a producer and as a DJ. Had a bit of a travel around the world. And then when I was about 25, I was like, is this what I want to do with my life? Is this something I can do till retirement? And came to the conclusion that no, it wasn't. So I quit. Had no idea what to do with my life. And in the Netherlands, if you don't know what to do with your life, there's like 2 options. Option number 1 is study psychology. Option number 2 is become a recruiter. And if you study psychology, you become a recruiter anyway. So I skipped that step and got into recruitment, and I quite liked it, and especially in IT, because in my past experience as a producer, I was really like into tech and actually understanding all the technical stuff that was happening, behind the tools I was working with. So for me as well, like the translation into IT was quite comfortable and easy for me, because most of the terminology was quite similar. So I got into IT recruitment, and after I think maybe 1.5 years of experience, got into Exebia, where I spent 6 years of my professional career, and I would say almost my entire professional growth and personal growth has come from this place.
It's interesting. One thing I've noticed is the same things that make a really great engineer, let's say data engineer or something like that, are also very similar, like personality-wise, to what makes a really great sound engineer, or even like other types of engineering. So,
is that so? So what are those traits that you mentioned then?
There are many. For example, being very obsessed with doing little changes here and there, having an eye for detail, love working with new tools, love experimenting with new technologies, picking up lots of books, tutorials, or not being afraid to just learn by breaking.
And in my case as well, sharing that knowledge, because I was continually, when I discovered something new, I immediately made a video about it so other people also know about it.
Yeah.
Also, sometimes the music industry is a bit different from IT, I guess, where it's like really open and open source stuff, and sharing knowledge. There, it was a lot of people that were quite cross with me that I was spoiling all these industry secrets and how to do certain things, where they wanted to keep it for themselves because it was like a unique sound that only a few people knew, and now everybody knew. But I was like, just share it.
Yeah, it's also quite weird. For some people, it's scary to share the things that they know.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a point where you know so much that it doesn't really matter. You understand that even if I make it a full-time job to share everything I know, it's not like I'm gonna run out of things.
Mm.
And even then, it's not like people are gonna listen to every single thing and learn
Yeah.
and become as knowledgeable as you. So
Yeah, and I think even when you do share it, you learn from that experience as well, and you also get the experience of people actually, trying stuff out and actually adding more on top of it, and giving you something back. So, yeah, it's kind of like this exponential thing. The more you share, you actually learn a lot more yourself as well. And if you're able to explain certain topics really well, that's when you know you've really, I wouldn't say fully mastered it right away, but you're a lot closer to it.
fair. Look, I know you have some very interesting opinions when it comes to recruitment and especially the strategy behind it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask it as this way: if you started a job 1 month ago, what would be your plan to turn the company into a great recruitment powerhouse?
Oh, that's a really interesting question.
Have you broken that process down into something you can share?
Oh, wow. So for me, it's the very first time that I'm really joining somewhere where it's like this blank canvas, and I can really get to work from scratch and do it how I think it should be done. And it's sometimes quite overwhelming, right? Because there's like 1,000 different things that I really want to do and focus on. And sometimes you do then maybe lose sight of what's really important to really tackle first. So for me, if the first thing I'm focusing right now is the low hanging fruit, right? So there's a situation right now where it's kind of like a black box. Nobody really knows what's going on, whose responsibility is what's been talked about. So I'm first focusing on streamlining the entire process, making sure that the amount of admin work is reduced to the bare minimum. So right now they have to write a lot and click like through a ton of different menus and everything. And I just, I'm inherently a very lazy person who also wants to work hard. So I tend to automate a lot of stuff away. So that's what I'm focusing on first, getting sure that the whole process is streamlined, it's quick, everybody knows what's going on. And then I'm going to start looking at, okay, so how can we actually get more people in and make sure the word gets out that this is an amazing company, and it's really boils down to being able to translate what the purpose is of like a company, or like what the purpose is for you as a candidate. So what is actually this company going to give you in return? Because I think that's, for me, that's the most important thing, to get out of bed and know that I have a very interesting purpose that I'm going towards, right? I think Xebia did that really well with the authority mission. That gave me a lot of purpose in the sense that I was really driven to become the best person and professional that I could be. And I knew that going to Xebia, we had this environment that really enabled you to get there. And the whole goal there was to, make sure that we can translate that into the job descriptions and get people enthusiastic about the opportunity of, joining this club.
It's a mix of handling the governance, streamlining the process, but also like making it attractive whatever place people are applying for.
Yeah.
You recruit almost exclusively data people, correct?
Well, not anymore now. I used to do it, of course, here, but now it's also cloud, software development, security, and I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. So if I do, I'm sorry.
I'm curious, from somebody that has interviewed potentially thousands of data people.
Yeah.
How is it different to recruit data people than it is different to recruit other types of professionals?
I think so. If we let's first cover what you mean with different kinds of professionals, right? So because for me, like data people, if it's like really tech, if I can group it like that, then software development and security, that's kind of similar, right?
No.
If it's different professionals, as in maybe someone who does like a business unit manager or office management or something like that, then there's a huge difference there. So if you look at the tech people, the things that I noticed that worked really well was really zooming in on the scope of project that we were doing, and the complexity of it, and then also like the people that you're going to be working with. So I think everybody wants to be surrounded by people that they can learn a ton from, right? So giving a lot of examples there in, so here we have Juan, who's a writer. He has actually published a book. And we have Bram, who actually worked on the James Webb Telescope. Well, no, sorry, the James Webb Telescope. And Rogier, who actually worked at CERN, at the Large Hadron Collider. And it's like those types of stories that really energizes a lot of those tech people, because they want to be with people who are like the forefront of technology. And I think with other types of roles, like other professionals, it's not really as much of a thing, right? Because you don't have like an office manager who is also a published author or is an Apache open source committer or something like that. Yeah. So that's a little bit different. I think there it's more about the purpose within the company, like how you can actually contribute to a bigger picture other than you sit at a desk and you write emails or you take calls. It's more about translating a different sense of purpose and how you're helping other people out.
For me, what I've noticed when I talk to my friends that don't work in data or find people that don't work in a technical field, what I notice is it's very easy for us to prove our value to a new company. It's just like, check my GitHub, check my tutorials, check this article, my conference talks, whatever it is. Or even give me a programming problem and I can solve it in front of you.
Yeah.
So that really changes the whole process, because they are not often trying to find out, like, they very quickly realize if you know or you don't. And it's more like, can I work with you? Can I teach you this? Can I, so on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when we are hiring for other roles in the past at Exebia, that's also something that I encountered, right? Because normally we had like a first interview, technical, and an assessment. How do you do that for somebody who is going to be a manager, for example? But you still do have some things, right? So I was very lucky here to have some great mentorship from like Reynold or Giovanni, who also have some great insights on those types of topics. Where we started thinking about, okay, so we want somebody who is actually a really good networker. And then we started thinking about, okay, so how do we actually question if somebody is a good networker and what types of answers are we looking for there? So you can still quantify it a little bit on is somebody going to be good for this role or not, but still a lot more fluid, I would say, than tech roles, right? Because I think even in tech roles, there's also not like a hard yes or no answer, or like this is only this answer is true, because I think there's still going to be multiple ways to solve a problem. But with those types of roles, it's going to be more complex in that sense.
Yeah, of course. Also, it's a lot harder to put your personal bias away when you're talking about, like, is somebody a good communicator or not?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Versus a good coder, well, it's a lot
so that's
easier.
A funny one, like a good communicator. If good communication or being a good communicator is a metric for you in whether or not to hire a person, and let's say you have 4 people that are going to be in the interviewing process, and if I ask each of those persons what are you looking for in terms of like a good communicator, then I'm probably going to get 4 different answers. So one of the other things that we did as well is really look at, okay, so what's going to be the business definition for the things we are looking for. So again, the example of networker, what are you actually looking for? Or if you put the value for people first, like it's very important for this manager to put people first. Okay, so if we ask on that, what do we mean? Like, and again, we don't need 4 different answers. We need one business definition and then like some elements of good answers. And if the person actually gives answers that are akin to what we are looking for, then we should all agree that that's what we're looking for.
And for example, how do you operationalize being a good networker?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think if somebody talks about how they are a networker and how they maintain their network, that should give you some sense of are they a good networker. If they can give some examples of opportunities that they've had in the past where they used their network, stuff like that, like how do they keep in touch with people. And I don't know exactly what we wrote down back then for the whole networking thing. I think we also asked them like if we needed to do a project in this area, who would you contact? Are there any opportunities that you might have an in on?
Yeah, it's quite tricky. I think To be honest, like, because this is something that I really like doing, and I ask a lot of data people. Most of them will tell me, "Oh, I hate networking," and then like that's a really big chunk. Some people say like, "Yeah, I like it, but I don't know how to do it or something." But then I also know people that they say like, "Oh yeah, I have meetings with very important C-level people almost on a monthly basis to discuss about data," and that's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's like 3 levels above of networking. But
Yeah.
even then, it's like a very small amount of people that only said like, "Yeah, I like networking," and the ones that have a network that is like super valuable is like much less.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm, that's an interesting one. And maybe also changing the question a little bit. Maybe somebody listening to this at the moment is currently looking for a job. What are your thoughts on the current tech market
As in?
for recruitment?
As in, are there lots of opportunities out there, or?
Everything, because I've heard from some people like, oh, it's getting better, the recession is going, lots of teams are expanding, but I also remember a lot of layoffs, and I'm getting a lot of contradictory information. So
Yeah.
I'm very curious
So
about your
I
thoughts.
do see that a lot. Like, the tech industry is quite shaken up, I think, where there's a lot of movement, and I think from a recruitment standpoint, we have an easier job right now, because I think I read the metric for this one last week. No, 3 weeks ago, before I went on holiday. So I haven't got it like fully sharp on my mind, but I do believe that the amount of people that apply to a new job themselves has risen to record heights for this year. Whereas normally as a recruiter, you'd spend most of your time, trying to reach out to people and getting them in.
Chasing it.
Yeah, and right now, if you do your marketing right and you have you have a good presence online, people will come. So I do see that there's a shift going on where a lot more people are looking for new roles and actually looking for themselves. So that as a recruiter, it's a bit of an easier job than it used to be. As a candidate, I think there's quite a lot of competition actually. I think we experienced that as well within Exebia, where we also had never really had a shortage of people, but was really about making sure we got the absolute best there. So yeah, it's a bit shaken up right now. I think hopefully it stabilizes a little bit. I would say, because you hear all these indeed like recession going on. I don't really notice that as much, but I hope it stays that way. That I don't really notice it that much.
Yeah, I hear from some companies like, oh, we just got some funding and we're going to expand the data team to 300 people. And some others like, we're laying off everybody. And you hear the same news on the same day.
Yeah.
So that makes it confusing. But okay, so apparently there is much more competition.
Yeah, yeah. But those companies that are having an investment and they scale to 300 in like 1 or 2 years, they're gonna be the other headline where they do the layoffs.
No, fair
It's
enough.
like a
It's also a
cycle.
pendulum.
It's like a cycle.
It's a
yeah.
cycle. Okay, and if you're one of the companies recruiting, you mentioned something interesting, and that is some companies will be just super happy to get anybody.
Yeah.
But if you're the type of company that is currently looking for somebody very experienced, like a senior, and maybe there is no room for you to hire the wrong person, what would be your recommendations?
So I think getting the right people in, I have to reach back to like the thing of making sure that there's a purpose behind the company that people get excited for, and I can just not. You cannot underestimate the importance of that and the impact it creates for your organization. And I can give you an example. For example, Norton Security, right? Everybody knows that company, and they have literally no problem getting people in. And even though the profile that they are looking for is of course extremely difficult to find, right? Those hardcore security people that can actually come up with new ways to fight cybercrime and stuff like that. But if you think about, okay, so how are they actually translating purpose? Why are people getting excited to become an employee at Norton, for example? Because in my mind, if you would tell me like the Norton Security, it sounds super dull. Like to me, it's not something that's interesting until I start reading into the purpose and how they have the culture set up. So with Norton, they are talking about that they are trying to fight against cybercrime, and they really need to do it in like a group format, and they need to get it right every single time. And like the bad guys only need to do it right once, right? And that kind of stuff is immediately like, oh yes, let's go, stand in the battle line and go for it. And that makes like the purpose super interesting for a lot of people who need that type of energy and purpose. And if you need the right people, translating that really well results in having great people in. The same with a lot of like medical companies that create new technologies for maybe cancer research or whatever, where it's really easy for them to translate the purpose of, you were trying to save lives here, and the things we create here will actually improve the lives of maybe thousands or millions of people worldwide. That gets people excited, that gets people in. So for any company that really wants to have the best people, then it's really about focusing on the purpose and the mission of your company, having a great culture around that, because the culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? So that will be my main thing. Well, what would you say?
Yeah, so you're advocating for appealing to human needs. You mentioned, for example, some people like the challenge of fighting cybercrime. Some people like the idea of justice. Some people like to help others.
Yeah.
Maybe being very cynical, what happens if your company is not appealing to any like higher motivation? You just make something boring that doesn't necessarily make the world a better place, but still you really want to create an environment where people are like, oh, but that place is cool to work for.
Yeah, but I think every single company should have, you should be able to make something really nice about it. So if I can also go to maybe something else entirely, it's like maybe you have a car wrapping company. You just need somebody who wraps cars. But if you're really looking for somebody who does that, and you talk about, about a mission of creating like the highest quality standards, the best work, maybe also give them the freedom to actually looking new materials or designs, or you can still make a nice purpose out of it, that you want to become like the best designer, or make a car that actually is going to win awards at a what do you call it, like a car show or something. I think every single company should be able to do something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, and if you can't do that, then I'd be genuinely surprised. And there we can also maybe start to look at a different type of purpose or mission that might interest a lot of people. For example, that FIRE movement. I'm not sure if you've heard of that.
No, what is it?
Financially independent, retire early. And I think a lot of young people right now, they struggle a lot with the housing market, cannot really afford anything because housing prices are going up. However, if you actually join somewhere where the whole financial independence is a very very high on their priority list, that could be very interesting, because then you can create purpose around being financially independent, making sure that you can actually take care of your family, living in a nice place, and do all these other things that enables. So that could be one. But we're still looking at different things, right? Because that could be interesting. I'm not saying that it's going to be that. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a part of it. But I think every company should be able to come up with something like that.
Yeah, fair enough. Because if you tell me, so what we do is very boring and it doesn't help anything and you're not going to feel fulfilled, but we have some interesting benefits that will help you get your retirement like 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
That already makes it like, oh, okay.
Okay, yeah.
And now once you have already that, like you're appealing to some sort of emotion, need, and you actually have a genuinely fun place to work at, how do you convey that to the market?
Yeah, I think that's the difficult thing to do, because especially if you talk about something like FIRE, like being financially independent, I don't think that the whole reason for joining should be that. There should be something more, right? So it's something we're working on, but it's really, I think the way you communicate it really well is in all these different content formats, right? So having some videos and examples especially. So I saw a really fun one actually internally for somebody that is already working there, who had a dream of owning a grand piano, which are quite expensive. And he actually was able to buy himself a full-size grand piano, like a vleugel in Dutch. So that, I think those types of examples would be really nice, right? I think for me, I would really love to get my racing license, and me being there is going to enable me to actually get a racing license. So it will also be a really nice example to, show actually what is the result of being there. I think, yeah, that would work. I would say.
Yeah, continue showing like what are you materializing out of all of this.
Like concrete examples and also the real people that are working there. Yeah, that would be nice.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe one thing that I really wanted to talk to you is, do you have some fun anecdotes when it comes to interviews? I'm 100% sure you do. Are there some that you're allowed to tell or to
Oh yeah,
mention?
I have a couple ones that are like weird but good weird, and have a good outcome. Maybe some that have a bad outcome. So I think one really fun one is somebody who actually also got hired at Exhibit Data back then. I remember that I was talking to him, and we were talking also about looking for new homes, and he was looking to rent something in Amsterdam, and he had a lot of difficulty getting something, and he had a really nice solution to it. So he was talking about that he just wrote a Python script that actually scanned his inbox, because he found this website where if you were the first to respond, you would get to say yes or no. So he wrote this little script that actually checked for emails from that specific platform, checked if it's the right zip code, checked if it's the right square meter. Like he has a couple of things that, if it all checks out, immediately send an email. So back then, the housing market already was crazy, and it typically would take people like a year or more to find something. He got a place in less than a week, and it was like in a prime location as well. Like obviously like. There should have been like 500 people that would have responded to it, but he got it. So I remember that when he told it, I was like, "Oh, this is great. This is such a fun conversation to begin with, and also this innovative and thinking outside of the box and having a problem and immediately just coming up with a solution." I remember that I immediately walked upstairs and asked Dennis, who's the sales guy, you got to talk to this guy, and he understood as well. Like, okay, yeah, this is really cool. We need to get him in. Still works here, by the way. Another example would be of maybe it would be nice to also tell people that it doesn't really matter how professional you look in some cases. Also, well, if you just have a good story and everything, it's fine. I remember another interview that I did through Teams. And the guy was sitting in like this student dorm room type thing on like a, what do you call it, een hoogslaper. It's a bed that's raised. Bunk bed, yeah. So it's a raised bed, and underneath the bed he had his little desk, and he even had like a bit of tarp behind him. But you can also just see like the really messy student things. I was like, and he also looked really young because he was really just finishing university. And I was really thinking, I'm talking to a kid here. But his story was so compelling and interesting and had some really great examples. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it, like give the guy a chance. And he was amazing as well. I think that in those two cases, it really boils down to have a really great communication, right? Like,
yeah.
What's the definition there? and being just really fun to talk to and being able to express your passion about what you're working on. So I also had an example of somebody who wasn't good at that, who was horrible at it.
At communicating.
Yeah, really about talking. He was really bad at talking about what interests him in this field and why he really enjoys working there. So I said, yeah, I don't think that this is the place for you, because with Exhibit Data it was like a group of in Dutch we call it. It's gonna be a bad word if we say it in English. Vakidioten, right? But it's VAK, not. And I didn't feel like he was that guy. So his response to me telling him that was grabbing this folder, like a binder, and he slammed his binder on the table, opened it up, and he started showing me every single degree and certification and course and nano degree, every single thing he had in a binder. I was like, dude, this doesn't really help your case now. It's just super. You're making things really, really weird here. And I also had somebody who was faking it. Like he was doing an interview with me, but he was actually just when I was asking him questions, he would just ask it to ChatGPT. So every time I asked him
Oh,
something, it would be a bit of a delay, and I could hear him typing away furiously and getting some questions in, and just reading GPT back to me. It's like,
But like, let's delve into this opportunity type of fancy GPT language.
delve. That's the word,
Yeah?
right? That's the main giveaway. Delve. I don't remember if I was familiar enough with it back then to know that delve was the word. But yeah, it was just obvious. It's obvious. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I think every time when you're talking about a job and you're trying to recruit a person, there are three categories. There are the things that really, really matter.
Yeah.
There are the things that occasionally or you think matter, and the things that definitely don't. For example, very specifically, if you're looking for a coder, being able to solve exactly the same problem that you would find on a normal day of work using the same tools is the skill that matters. Writing codes in a piece of paper or something like that might occasionally matter, but rather not. And then there are things like having tattoos or not that I don't think matter for most jobs. How do you...
So I have an example on that where it was really bothering me. It was a lady who was also quite obese, like morbidly so. And she wore a shirt that has really low cut. So I was like looking straight into it almost. And it had like a really big lettering tattoo that said love on it. I was like, no. It's very hard to take somebody serious if they show up and they have them hanging out almost. And it says love. So I do agree. Like a lot of times, I don't care about it because I think tattoos are great. It's like, our car with just a nice color is nice. Put some striping on it. It looks even faster. It's the same with tattoos. Humans look great. Even better with some nice striping and things. But yeah, there are just some that I just can't get around it, man.
Yeah, no, so sometimes you can overdo it or do it wrong. But what I was hinting at is, how exactly do you separate, like, no, these are the things that really matter versus the ones that don't?
So I would do a couple of these sessions every now and then with some of the people that I really knew, like certain roles. So for example, if you were looking for a data engineer, get 4 people from data engineering there. And each of them, they have 3 colored Post-its. And on one color, they write down all the soft skills they're looking for, hard skills, and culture stuff. And each of them do it individually, but then we actually have like a group session where we put it on the whiteboard and maybe group some things together, explain what we mean, make some clustering. So these are all part of the same type of thing. And then we start talking about like, okay, so if I find somebody that doesn't have this, should I just immediately reject him? No. Okay. So then let's put an asterisk on there that it's not really necessary. So that way you can really start tackling away about, okay, what is actually going to be necessary here. And I think a lot of times it's almost impossible to get like the perfect person who hits every single metric that you're looking for. Where I'm just a very, very strong believer in always hiring for one specific metric, which is like having a growth mindset, being able to receive feedback and act on it and learn and being very curious. And then, then of course there needs to be a good foundation there, right? Because I cannot hire somebody who's really enthusiastic as a data engineer who has never done any data engineering. But I think being trainable and coachable should cover a lot of other different things.
Talking about all of those nice to have, and especially soft skills, what are your thoughts on everything from fairness to being unfair with somebody based on whatever it is, their culture, their uh, skin color, their religion, or how do you keep those biases in check? Or
Yeah, I think it's really difficult, but at the same time, all those types of things have never been things I really discussed, I would say, or put in writing, or just or evaluated somebody on. So when you have like your hiring process set up really well, and it's not a black box, right? So you really know what everybody's talking about. Then I would be very surprised if religion or I don't know, ethnicity or migration background, stuff like that, is a metric in what you're writing down. And if that's if it is, that's a big problem, I would say. I would have some big problems with that in any company that does that. But I've never done that, so it's not something that I've experienced in the last 6 years to have happened. Um, is it something that you have experienced?
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I've heard some people say some very racist things.
Really?
Yeah, one time we were hiring for a data position.
Mm.
There were two CVs. One of them was objectively maybe 30% better. I think everybody would agree, like, yeah, this person more experienced. But it happened to have oh god, okay, I'm gonna say it. It happened to have an Arab name, and the manager said, like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna hire this guy to pray during working hours. And we were like, oh shit, he said that out loud.
Oh,
So
damn.
that was horrendous. I've seen, but those are really weird cases.
So
More
I
of
would
them-
say to that guy, by the way, okay, so the other guy, are you okay with him taking 5 smoke breaks a day?
yeah, he was a smoker. That's exactly what we told him.
Yeah.
But those are the crazy edge cases. In reality, people tend to confuse things. Best example is a lot of vacancies require you to speak Dutch in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
However, I am confident that not a lot of people are able to put the line, as in like Dutch as a skill, or aligning with the Dutch way of being and making sure that everybody likes you and that your cultural views don't conflict with people in the office.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think you that's a good point. I think also I like that quite a lot about Xavier, that that was really not, at least in data, not that Dutch requirement. It was nice that people could understand a little bit, but that the goal there was more about making sure that they could feel welcome, because if you're sitting at a table and there's 3 Dutch people and it's you, then of course they can speak English, all of them can. But at some point, they hate each other's English accents. I especially hate my own English accent, because sometimes I can sound like a bit of a potato. I don't know. But and they will switch to Dutch a little bit, and then you'll feel left out, and that's something we didn't want. So we wanted people to have some understanding of Dutch as like a preference. And I feel like having that as a requirement,
No.
I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not a big fan.
For me, very specifically, as somebody living abroad, the only thing I'm looking for is that when my nationality or my culture comes up, it always is in a, yeah, so what? You're Colombian, the guy is Greek, the guy is Bulgarian, this person is Brazilian, so what?
No.
But if it ever comes across as a weakness, as in like, oh yeah, but better not because we need somebody that understands this or that, it's always tricky. So before I started working for Civia, that's one thing I checked, like, what's the percentage of international people?
Mm.
Are you putting them in your webpage as in like, we have, oh, Brazilian, look, it's an
We
unusual
have a
creature. We caught one. If it's being highlighted as like your own preposition of value, that's also not very comfortable. I
Yeah.
don't want to stick out because of something I don't control.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I always cringe a little bit when I see it happen. It's like we have a token.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also happens to women. Being honest, it's just I only see the nationality part of it.
Yeah, and somewhere I do see sometimes some value in highlighting the women thing, but I think they're highlighting it in the wrong places, I think.
Yeah.
So I would rather see that being done more in maybe high schools or places where they are like study conferences where you actually get to experience different studies, directions, and learn what you could be doing. Focus there a bit more that also women can do these things. A company that has like this token women in tech thing, I think it's the wrong place. You just need great people, and whatever background they have doesn't really matter. At least not to me. I'm not looking for a place that has an X amount of Dutch people or an X amount of Germans or whatever.
Oh, my hot take there is every single time I apply for a job or something like that, I always check like the LinkedIn of the people working there, and especially also like the C-level and the very important people, the managers. I just happen to expect that roughly half of them are women, and roughly whatever the percentage of international people in the country is, here in the Netherlands is, depending on where you are, somewhere between 20 to 10%. If I don't see those numbers represented in especially higher management, I know that maybe I might not want to work there. Even if they're happy to give you like a entry-level position and like, sure, welcome to the team, you just know that after some years, you're not going to be the one getting promoted.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, so to me, especially like, but you also see it in other ways, like how is mentoring being tackled, and if people are getting mentored on an equal basis, and
No, yeah.
just it's not about like hiring somebody that is not qualified, but making sure that everybody gets equally qualified by the time they're in the company for 3-5 years or whatever it is, 10.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. I didn't even. For me, it's of course different. Being native from the Netherlands, it's not a problem that I personally encounter. So it's interesting because I never thought of it that way. Thank you for that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mm.
Maybe also changing gears. One topic that I know you're very interested in, and maybe you have some interesting takes, is the whole recruitment stack, and maybe even how AI is changing the whole thing.
Yeah.
I've been getting a lot more recruitment messages that are clearly written with AI, but I also know there is a good way of doing it.
You know, the funny thing is, so a lot of companies have been rolling out these AI functionalities. So LinkedIn has like this tool that has an AI that actually writes the email for you, and of course with ChatGPT you could also ask for like, oh, I need to write somebody and write something for me. The issue is that all of them are being trained on previous data, right? And so before AI, would you say the majority of the messages you got was good? Probably not. Like a lot of them was like really bad. But so all those AI have been trained for like a majority of really bad messaging. And the really good ones are of course quite tailored and unique. It's a bit more difficult to maybe, get that in. So every time when I tried it out, like, okay, I have an AI write a message for me, I would really just laugh because it's like, oh, this is the quintessential bad recruiter example that I'm getting right now. So it's kind of funny on that. I don't think that's something that should be used in that regard. But there's a lot of different areas that AI is really helping a lot, right? So when I joined Exebia, I you had this really nice educational budget, and of course a ton of people who want to teach you all that they know. And in my case, of course, I don't have that much of a technical background, right? So I think if you have like the Dunning-Kruger graph, I'm perpetually on like the slope of enlightenment where I know how much I don't know. But I still know enough on a functional level to maybe keep up a little bit and fiddle around with some of my own. So one example that I think is really great for recruitment is that one of the most difficult things for me is to write a new job description. Like doing it from scratch, I'm like, stuff. Yeah. So I quickly found out that, of course I don't have to do it alone. And at Exebia, I sat with a couple other people, I think it was Stijn and Gio and Reynald, and I gave them some ideas on like what should a job description look like, what should be the body, which types of information points do we want in there, and they would give some examples and they write it, and so we had one really good one, and then create another one and create another one, and then I thought, okay, now we need to do it more even easier, and you can of course create these custom GPTs now, right? So you can kind of create like this retrieval augmented generation type for your job descriptions. So I would feed it all these the documentation of how should it look like. I would feed it the examples of the good ones. Then I would give it all these examples of what I didn't want to see as well. Then I gave it as well like a lot of different content in the form of like different types of projects that we did, and all these other information points. And then when I needed to write all the other ones from Exebia, I would just tell it like, okay, this is the job profile that I have, which is like a shopping list, I always call it. Also funny story where that comes from. And it would generate something that had the tone of voice of Exebia, had the styling of Exebia, and it also came with relevant project examples. Because something I really appreciated in job descriptions is having some concrete evidence on the scale and complexity, right? It's something that I actually didn't invent the wheel on, because a lot of really great careers pages have it. So for example, if you go to bol.com, one of the first things they will throw in your face is like the amount of daily visits on their web page. The amount of products being sold, how many different types of products, and it's all a hard number, so it's quite easy to envision how big it is. So that's something that I also then implemented at Exebia, and it just took it all from the data that I was feeding it from the different projects. So I think that's a really great one. Something else that will be that is going to be something that's going to be more used, I think, in the near future is the marketing side, where you can automate a lot of different marketing aspects and continuously A/B test, and have AI just write some short sentences and see what works best. That's what we're working on as well at Freshminds to do that. But even I think if you look at like the bias and making sure that everything is fair, there's also this tooling now where I think you know what it's called. I just lost the name of it. It's I think it's not Copilot. It's related to it. Never mind what it's called. But if you do an interview, it will then transcribe the entire interview. But not only that, you can also then ask, like a GPT wrapper, what did the candidate say about this, or does the candidate know this, and it will actually give you summary of those points and actually give you a link to the portion of the interview where it's being said. So I think those are really great innovations where there's a lot of admin work taken away, and as a recruiter you can focus more on the interesting parts of your work, which is maybe focusing more on innovation and of course holding conversations, because in my mind the human aspect of recruitment will never go away. At least I hope it doesn't, because can you imagine going into a job interview and you talk to a robot or something? No, not.
That's horrendous. Honestly, I think a lot of people, especially like the more senior profiles, they tend to get rejected quite a lot by those automatic CV scanners.
Do they really?
Well, yeah, because when this is just maybe I don't have real data to back this up, but more like experiences. When you have a profile that is like very specialized and you're very knowledgeable, you forget a little bit on how to speak in broad terms or speak to like a more generic things. As experienced data people, we tend to see like some very generic keywords as a bad thing. So if you're hiring for a very, very senior data scientist, using a lot of words like AI, it's maybe not that good. You probably expect that person to name the specific model that they're using. And being that specific and staying away from the generic stuff, it's sometimes like a bad thing. And I think if a recruiter of a person reads the CV, many of them would say like, whoa, this is the right person.
Yeah.
But sometimes machines don't see that, and that to me is like a bit scary.
Ah.
That we have to make it a bit more generic, a bit more broad, and maybe a bit more clickbaity so that we pass
Yeah, maybe if you
some of the
apply for a
CV
position,
scanners.
change the CV for that specific position, that everything they are looking for, highlight that stuff. That should help
Yeah.
a little bit. A lot, I think.
Yeah, fair. So the recurring topic that we're seeing here is that it's not that it's a bad idea to use AI for anything recruitment or any type of work. The real sin here is to not fine tune it.
Yeah, yeah,
The standard, the median, the average tends to be very bad.
yeah.
So if you keep exactly that, it's gonna be quite embarrassing.
I think it's also a little bit about a lot of users not really understanding what it's doing, and maybe not also knowing enough about the subject to understand that what it's doing is not really correct. So I think if people are more educated on that, I think the usage will improve quite a bit.
No, true. There is another interesting topic about recruitment that I also wanted to ask you, and that is, I think a really good recruiter, let's say data recruiter, is somebody that maybe doesn't know how to code in Scala or something like that, but somebody that understands the relationship between, let's say, Databricks and Spark and Scala, and more or less how they're related, and that if somebody says like I'm good at Spark, that it should be also good for like a Databricks vacancy. Just having that knowledge gap of knowing how things are related, understand big terms, that to me is what makes somebody really good. And my question to you is, how do you keep up to date with all of these things? What is your strategy to understand this tech landscape in a way that helps you be a good recruiter?
So the first one here, being intrinsically interested and motivated to keep up to date on this. If there's no interest for you there, then it's going to be very tough. And then some of the stuff that really helped me out is I have one of my favorite books to that I also give to everybody that joins my team. Always give that book, which is called How to Speak Tech. And it's not even a really huge book, but it's the book has it's kind of like story driven, and it talks about creating this new web shop type of company, and they start talking about, okay, so what do you need to actually get this web shop running? And now, okay, so it's getting bigger, and we need to add more regions to it. So how do we scale this? What different roles do you need? And it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have all these different roles. So you get a bit of like a basic understanding of, okay, I understand the need for these roles in this in the IT environment. Then also I did actually learn to do a couple things. So I learned SQL, HTML, and Python. Did some courses in that. And right now, if you would ask me to write code on that, I'm an expert at writing bad code. But I would say that I know enough that usually when I see something, I understand it. I mean, I would say I understand a little bit what it's going to be doing or what it's doing. I would say it like that. And then also, again, AI can be very useful here. So I made a custom GPT that actually is a tech explainer for non-technical people. So I took it from the book a little bit. And every time I do encounter something that I don't know, I immediately ask it, okay, so what is this thing? Or what does it do? And because I've put a lot of like foundational knowledge on a functional level on all these different things, I can also get more questions saying, okay, so how does it compare to this? So with different streaming technologies, I was thinking, okay, so I think it was a couple of weeks ago I had a question on that, which was a streaming technology. Is that Flink?
It could be Flink or...
So I was confusing it, so I thought that Airflow was that as well, but then I started asking, and it's okay, no, because Airflow is like his workflow, it's these workflows, so you can actually, so I asked, okay, so you actually can use Airflow to trigger maybe the event from Flink or something. Yes, okay, you can do that, and it, so, yeah, but for me, it's intrinsically motivated to actually understand these things, because when I spoke to people like you or anyone else from data, and they would talk about their jobs, I would feel embarrassed if I had a conversation and I'm just saying, oh yes, interesting, and then not understand what it was actually what it was actually talked about. And the other thing is just be open about what you don't know, right? So if a subject comes along and you don't understand it, ask, explain it. And oftentimes people enjoy explaining these things, right? So,
For sure, if you're a good communicator, you can get away with a lot of that.
yeah, yeah.
We are almost running out of time, but I was wondering if you would like to leave some last words. For example, I think a lot of people that are currently looking for a job now, what advice would you give them as somebody that has worked as a recruiter for this long?
If you're looking for a job and you go into interviews, I would say my biggest advice is try to be 100% yourself and not anything else. You're going to be the most happy in the role where you can be 100% yourself and you don't need to take your professional self to work, but you just take yourself to work. And then you don't have to spend all that energy being something you're not.
Yeah.
And you're going to be a lot more successful and happy and have an enjoyable time.
For sure, if you're gonna hate wearing a suit every day to work,
Don't do it.
don't come with a suit to the first
Don't do it.
interview.
Yeah, yeah. And if you don't like being very formal, hierarchical, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
And companies will naturally reject you, but that's fine because you probably were not gonna be happy in a place like that.
You're rejecting them. They are not rejecting you.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Look, it was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for everything.
Yeah, thank you. It was also great to be here again and nice talking to you.